Imagine you're the most powerful battleship ever built. You've just blown up Britain's most beloved warship in under 10 minutes. You're unsinkable, you're unstoppable, you're a floating steel god, and you've got 8 days left to live. Today we're covering one of the most insane naval chases in history, the hunt and death of the German battleship Bismarck. Buckle up because this story has everything: explosions, betrayal, a torpedo that hit a rudder by pure luck, and over 2,000 men who never came home. Let's set the scene. It's 1939. Nazi Germany wants to flex on the world, and they decide the best way to do that is to build the most terrifying warship anyone has ever seen. Enter the Bismarck. 823 feet long, 52,000 tons of armored nightmare, 8 15-inch guns that could hurl a shell the size of a Volkswagen Beetle over 20 miles. She could hit 30 knots, fast for something that big. This thing wasn't just a warship, it was a message. The plan, codenamed Operation Rheinübung, which is German for "Let's go ruin everyone's day," was simple. Send the Bismarck out into the Atlantic, tear apart Allied supply convoys, and starve Britain into submission. Bold move, maybe too bold. On May 19, 1941, the Bismarck and her escort, the heavy cruiser Prinz Eugen, slipped out of port under cover of darkness. The two ships thought they were being sneaky. They were not. The Swedes spotted them almost immediately. The British found out. And instead of panicking, the Royal Navy did what the Royal Navy does. They sent basically everyone. The entire home fleet started moving. On May 24th, the Bismarck ran straight into HMS Hood and HMS Prince of Wales in the Denmark Strait, the narrow passage between Greenland and Iceland. HMS Hood was Britain's crown jewel, the most famous warship in the world, the ship that schoolchildren drew pictures of, the nation's pride. Hood fired first from 14 miles away. Giant shell splashes erupted around the Bismarck. The Germans returned fire. For 4 minutes. 4 minutes, these giants traded blows. Then one German shell, possibly the luckiest or most devastating shot in naval history, punched through Hood's thin deck armor and hit her rear ammunition magazine. The explosion was visible from 30 miles away, a column of fire 600 feet tall. Hood broke in half and sank in under 8 minutes. 1,419 men were on Hood, only 3 survived. 3. Let that sink in. The Royal Navy had just lost its most beloved ship, and the Bismarck had barely broken a sweat. Back in Britain, the response was immediate. Winston Churchill's order came down: sink the Bismarck. Not find her, not engage her. Sink her. But then, Bismarck did something almost comically embarrassing for the Royal Navy. She disappeared. The British lost contact with Bismarck on May 25th. The entire home fleet was now searching the wrong direction. They thought she was heading back to Norway. She was actually heading southeast toward France. Here's the ironic twist. The Germans thought they were still being followed. Admiral Lütjens broke radio silence to send a message back to Germany, which let the British triangulate his position. He accidentally gave himself away. The British scrambled Force H from Gibraltar, including the aircraft carrier HMS Royal, and sent it racing north. This was now a race against time, because if Bismarck made it to the French port of Brest, she'd be under air cover and effectively untouchable. On the afternoon of May 26th, a British Catalina flying boat, basically a pudgy patrol plane, spotted the Bismarck. Game back on. Royal launched her torpedo bombers, old fairy swordfish biplanes. And yes, they look like something from World War I. The Bismarck's crew must have looked up and thought, "Are you serious right now?" The first wave nearly torpedoed HMS Sheffield by mistake, an absolute disaster, but also kind of funny if it didn't happen to you. They recalibrated and launched again. The second wave got through, and out of all the hits they could have scored, one torpedo struck the Bismarck's rudder. Jammed, stuck. The most powerful battleship in the world was now sailing in circles. Night fell. Bismarck was crippled, steering gear gone, heading vaguely northwest, back toward the British fleet. British destroyers swarmed around her all night, harassing her like angry hornets, launching torpedo attacks and keeping her crew awake and terrified. On board the Bismarck, morale was crushed. Admiral Lütjens had already been radioing back to Germany, essentially telling his men to prepare to die. Not exactly the motivational speech of the century. He sent a final message to Hitler: "We will fight to the last shell. Long live the Führer." Hitler reportedly replied with a Iron Cross for everyone style radio message. The crew was not impressed. By dawn on May 27th, the Bismarck was barely moving, surrounded, no way out. But she wasn't going to just give up quietly. At 8:47 a.m. on May 27, 1941, the battleships King George V and Rodney opened fire. Then the cruisers Norfolk and Dorsetshire joined in. The Bismarck fought back. Her guns were still working. Her crew was still fighting. Even now, for 100 minutes, the British poured over 2,800 shells into her. They scored 400 hits. The Bismarck superstructure was obliterated. Her guns fell silent one by one. But she would not sink. Rodney closed to under 2 miles. Point-blank range for guns that size, it's basically pushing the barrel against someone's chest. And still, the Bismarck didn't go down. The British were running low on fuel. Tovey had to leave. He ordered HMS Dorsetshire to finish the job with torpedoes. But here's the debate that historians still argue about today. Did the British finally sink her? Or did her own crew scuttle her first, opening the valves to deny the British a prize? The answer is, probably both. The scuttling charges were opened, the torpedoes hit, the Bismarck sank at 10:39 a.m. Over 2,100 men went down with her. British ships began pulling survivors from the freezing Atlantic, 110 men, before a U-boat alarm forced them to leave. Hundreds more were left in the water. The Bismarck was found again in 1989 by Robert Ballard, the same man who found the Titanic. She sits nearly 16,000 feet below the surface, largely intact, her guns still pointing defiantly toward the sky. She sank on her first and only real mission, 8 days at sea, and she changed naval warfare forever, proving that even the mightiest ship was vulnerable from the air. The age of the battleship was ending. The age of the aircraft carrier had begun. That's Fields of Glory. If you learned something today, hit subscribe. We've got more battles, more stories, and more of the moments where history turned on a single torpedo. See you on the next field.